Time to set the stage with the lights off. Let the little nigga breathe till the fight's lost. You ain't never like the room with the bright sauce. Hail Mary, they despise what the light brought. Let them roach niggas bleed if they can't see. sa.neter TV, what you can't be. They say that murder on my mind, now they can't breathe. Take a picture of the crew, that's your last peep. Oh, and need me or love, yeah, that's just me. Keep them jumping like some frogs, so they might believe what the sun say. And they don't really wanna bleed from the gunplay. And like mine, niggas smoking weed on the one-way street, nigga. Yeah, we see we outside with it. Pull up to debates like we might be with it on guard. Side these niggas like bullshit and they fraud. Let me chop them down with the sword. Walk them down like they live hard. This the toughest you gon' be in, we too hard. And you don't really want that smoke, my G. Would be sa.neter TV. This the toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Keep that off your lip before you get flipped. We got sources over here, we don't just spit. Too many bosses over here, y'all just legit. Put them niggas in the game, let them get real. Don't even step unless you come in with that scholarship. That economic tip, gotta make a dollar flip. And I might be next, I don't give a damn, a truth rolling with me, so I'm feeling like the son of man. Too many gon' hate, gotta make a stand. I'm just trying to duck the lake, you don't understand. Read them when I greet them, that's my best plan. Head first shit, I'm just saying. Nigga meet me in LA, oh you just playing. Too many be fake, what the base saying. So I tell them they don't want no smoke before they end up in the newspaper next day. Smoke, this the toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. The toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in. And this is it right here. The toughest you gon' ever be in. You wasn't conscious before us. Y'all niggas was asleep. We woke the sleeping giant. We did it. sa.neter TV. So stay your ass in your little bitty box where you feel safe. Cause it's motherfucking monsters over here. Real monsters.
Peace and Pan-Africanism. It's your brother Herman Smalls in the toughest environment you can be in.
And so without any further ado, I bring to you my brother Michael Edwards. The time starts when you're ready. Go ahead, Mike.
All right. First of all, I'd like to say giving honor and praise to my God, the one God, the Lord of all. Secondly, I want to give these brothers honor that have allowed me this chance and this opportunity, especially my brother sa.neter. I appreciate your platform and I appreciate you honoring me to this extent. Now, and also the brother Jabari, I honor you and I respect you, man. As a
all right, I want to let you know I didn't start your time yet. I'm letting you get all that out before I start. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, go ahead. Hit it now.
All right, you now on the clock. Go.
Okay, much respect to the brother Jabari, and I honor you as a scholar as well as a brother. But my point in bringing this, and for the past 5 years, since KEMET on trial, was not a malicious undertaking. But the point still remains that I was saying 5 years ago, that all that study chematology are not forthright with information, are not honest, many times, more times than not, these people become masters of omission of pertinent information that will not only join most common belief systems of Africa, but will also allow you all to see something unhindered and unfettered. Objective teaching is what is needed today. Nobody needs to guide you as your guru. They need to point you in the right direction and let you see what is plainly there. All of us are evolved beings, and we all have that ability. We all are beings that definitely have two nouns as our makeup, ba and ka. In the Hebrew culture, that is ruach and nefesh. We believe a commonality to this extent. That extent digs deeper into literality, literal. When you have a soul and a spirit, or either of the two, you cannot be a myth. One more time. When you have a ba and a ka, you cannot be a make-believe principle alone. The Bible is written on several different levels. The Bible is written on the Targum level. The Bible is written upon the Hebrew Aramaic level. And then the Bible is written upon the English and the rest of the world's translations and transliterations. All three aspects are important to be taught. Same goes with KEMET. All three. The pictorial aspects of your papyri, the actual medunetter, and the what that means, and the textual level, which will be what you get in most of these books, like the Papyrus of Ani from Raymond Faulkner. Now, we're going to start with Raymond Faulkner. And let me remind you, Faulkner, above Wallace Budge and Mercer and all of these other people, Ogden Gillette and Wasserman, and just you go on down the line all the way back to the French people that came and robbed Egypt. All of these people have a golden thread. I'm pretty sure the brother Jabari will want you to look past the golden thread. But remember, I said to you, ba and ka equal literal. Ba and ka equal you. And guess what? Ba and ka is described in the prime God that is said to be the soul of Re. In the Papyrus of Ani is where I'm going to bring that forth later, and you will see that. But I want to frame my conversation in three papyri: the Papyrus of Ani, the Papyri of Hinutawi, and the Papyrus of Tamanu, which are three very, very, very clear papyri. And these three papyri are clearly being run from your community. In the introduction hymn to Osiris, I want to point out to you even monotheism. Monotheism, one more time, monotheism. In the introduction to the hymn of Osiris is a reference to the Lord of all. The Lord of all, there's one of those. There's one of those, one more time, one of those, and that's called monotheism. We believe in monotheism. Deuteronomy 6:4. Shema Yasharal Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. My God, your God is one. Same belief. We believe in powers exceeding ex magistrates, all that exude the creative power of Yahuwah. The same is with your nature principles, but you don't teach it to the degree that you can separate what is nature principle and what is literal ba and ka. Now, when I tell you the introduction of the hymn of Osiris, it likens Osiris to be a king of kings, a lord of lords, a ruler of rulers. And it also, again, alludes to the fact that there is a Lord of all.
Time.
You will find this written in plate 2A and 2B. How close am I? Quickly.
Let's see how I can get this done. First of all, let me say very quickly that Brother Michael has actually said that I made a comment in one of my response videos to him that sodomy is just that which comes from Sodom. And I want to be clear that that is not quite what I said. I was actually being, and I said in the video that I was being facetious, that in actuality what I said was that how in the world could he use the word sodomy when Sodom doesn't even exist when KEMET is in its heyday? And that essentially what I was saying is that the grandchild is attempting to tell the grandparents about social mores with regard to sexual appropriate sexual interactions. And I thought that that was ludicrous. Now, let's be very clear. Let's be extremely clear here. Sodom is actually, the name sodomy comes from the biblical story of a land of Sodom. That's where it comes from. So I want to be absolutely clear that I understand as well that Brother Michael is actually asking a broader question that I have no problem with challenging. He is actually saying, some folks are saying that I'm too low. I'd like to see if I can try to change that. What he's actually saying is that we are in a situation where KEMET, so folks are saying they can't hear me. Okay. I don't know how to, I hope that you're able to hear me. Sa.neter, can you change my audio? Most people in the video are now saying they can't hear me. No, some people are saying the volume is good. Listen, I'm gonna just go through it.
Turn up your phone. Turn up your phone.
But my phone is just the speaker. It's not the actual audio. I don't think that's gonna affect the two things. So I don't know. Can you see me?
Your audio is perfectly clear here.
Okay, so I'm gonna do the best I can here, and hopefully you're able to hear me, family. I honestly believe that even if you hear a tenth of what I'm saying, it would easily defeat the things that are being said by our brother, because he's saying things that are absolutely ludicrous. I'm gonna address whether we are in a situation where the neteru, the divine forces of characters, are actually engaging in inappropriate sexual interaction. And I'm also going to address this concept that a sar is a human person, is someone that is actual, that is literal. And that is the commentary that our dear brother is saying. Now, let me say to you that you need to understand that one of the comments that our brother is making is that a sar is a literal person because he has a family tree. That is crazy. Folks, a simple Google search would reveal to you that in his family tree are Geb and Nut. Search for Nut, family. Search the term Nut goddess. And you will see that Nut is actually the lady of the heavens. She is depicted with stars on her body. In the evening, this sacred, beautiful African goddess swallows the sun and gives birth to it in the morning. So you must understand that if a character is able to do that, we are talking in spiritual symbolism. By the way, her husband, her consort, is Geb. And Geb is usually depicted with green skin. He's depicted with green skin because Geb is the earth. By the way, in the sacred myth that even Brother Michael has related to in one of his earlier videos, Brother Michael makes a lot of videos. I wish you could actually look at some of them. You'll see that he actually contradicts himself quite often. You'll actually see that Geb and Nut were separated by their father. Now, what separates the heavens and the earth? Their father is Shu. Their father is air. So clearly you understand that this is a philosophical description of the way that the world works and the way that energy manifests itself on this plane. Now, if they are born, if they give birth to if they are in the lineage of a sar, then what you are seeing is we are talking about great symbolism. By the way, Asar, and I said this, I'm not sure if you were able to see it, Asar is usually depicted with, is often depicted with plants growing from his body. And the reason why you see him with plants growing from his body is that there's actually a commentary about resurrection, sacred resurrection. He is a symbol of resurrection. He is a symbol of the everlasting soul. He is murdered and then resurrected. And in his resurrection, he allows the rest of us to be able to be resurrected. That is the way that this works. By the way, that story might sound very similar to you, that a deity must die in order for the rest of us to be able to have access to a divine life. And the reason why it sounds similar is because it is the same story that we hear in the story of Yeshua, in the story of Jesus. So I want you to be very clear that this is a situation where we are talking about sacred imagery. By the way, all of you probably know that Asar was cut into 14 pieces, that his great queen put them back together, and his son and his queen were able to resurrect him. What human, what literal being could do that sort of thing? The concept of saying that simply because Asar has a soul means that he is actually literal is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I don't even know how else to describe it. In addition to that, in the text that the brother read, and I want you to know that it seems that Brother Michael has read one or two papyri and he wants to point out things that sound unusual to him. You have to understand there are thousands of papyri. I have been reading these texts for decades. So if you see something that looks unusual in one text, perhaps you should speak to someone who is more learned than you. Enroll in my class on the history of KEMET. Come to my regular worship sessions that happen every other week. I'm not saying you have to be in Harlem, dear brother. We go Facebook Live. If you want more information, get it. And this also goes to the statement that he made, that he believes that those in the land of KEMET have been practicing omission. And he said that this is something he feels ever since KEMET on trial. The reason why our dear brother feels that way is because he's sorely mistaken that debates are an opportunity for comprehensive instruction. They don't occur that way. In a debate, all you're doing is addressing issues with other parties. This is not an opportunity for a full discussion of a tradition. And so I want you to understand that that concept doesn't really make sense. So let me read what he read, because I think that he doesn't even understand what he read. And it comes from plate 7 of the Papyrus of Ani. I'll show you what I'm reading from, since he seems to show you what he's reading from. And the reason why I like this one is because it has the glyphs. You could read it for yourself if you disagree with the translation. But this is the portion that he misconstrues. It says, he is Osiris. Now, let's be clear. Osiris is a Greek name. I use the term Asar because I am an African, and I am going to reference those names that my African ancestors use. I'm not beholden to the Greeks. So it says, he is Asar. Who is he? He is Asar. Otherwise said, his name is Re. His name is praise of Re. He is the soul of Re, with whom he himself copulated. I want you to be clear that he's not understanding the pronouns. Perhaps if he was able to actually read the text in its original form, he would understand the pronoun. The he in this sentence is not related to Asar. Asar is not a creation deity. Asar is a resurrection force. The he who copulated with himself is Re. And he wants to say this is literal. Folks, when you go outside on a hot day like the one I'm having in Harlem today, and you feel that sun beating down on you, you might say the sun rays are beating down on me. Do you actually recognize that the term you're using references the divine force of your African ancestors? You can't even talk about a sunny day without paying homage to your African ancestors, because the term sun ray is acknowledgement of Re or Ra. This is not a literal character. You know, family, that Ray, who sits behind me, as you see him with the sun on his head, is a manifestation of the divine force of the sun. This is not a literal character. Now, I want you to be clear, simply because he's not literal doesn't mean that the description is not of importance. I think that is the reason why our dear brother is so confused in this regard. He believes that if it's literal, it's important. Why does he have that misconception? Because the way that he understands his Abrahamic tradition was manipulated by Europeans. I want you to get a copy. I told Brother Tazariak to get this book. I really hope he has. Get a copy of this book, Jesus Wars. There's so many others that will give you a better understanding of the history of Christianity, the history of the text that you're reading. Because you're going to say, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Hebrew Israelite. Yeah, but you're reading the same text, brother. Take a look at this one, the Jesus Mysteries. I could literally, by the way, you should understand this. These are just 2 books from my library. I could show you the dozens that I've read that have explained this story. If you're just reading the Bible, you're just reading the books that were curated. You should understand that there were many other books that were used by early Christians and Jews. And some of those books were decided not to be included in what you consider your canonical Bible. Who made that decision? Europeans made that decision. The Tom who made that decision. African, you didn't make that decision. In fact, let's go further. We know that some of the text, and this is something that you can research very easily. I'm going to show you some research in a moment if I have time. I want you to also recognize that some of these texts as well are coming almost literally from Kemetic texts, from earlier Kemetic texts. So as you understand that, you have to understand that the Bible is a series of decisions. Every spiritual text is. I'm not trying to tell you that my texts come from some sacred source that wasn't actually inhabited by the hands of humans. What I am actually saying,
like the video, thumb up the video.
Made decisions on how you should be a divine being.
Jabari, you see your time?
Yeah.
Do you see your time?
I don't, because I'm...
All right, you got 3 minutes. You got 3 minutes.
Okay.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so I want you to understand that this is a great problem with some of the description that our dear brother has. I'm not sure if you're able to see this. I just want to show you some of these really quickly. First of all, one of the things that you need to understand is that the individuals, the Kemetic tradition is not the only tradition that has mythological characters. Not by far. In actuality, you should, in fact, I'm not going to even show you the slide. Let me give you a quote, okay? Because some of you are going to say, well, he's making a claim. Where's his source? Well, this one is an article called Deconstructing the Walls of Jericho. It was in the Biblical Archaeological Review, and it was actually in Haaretz magazine. And it says, here's the article that's printed. It says, by the way, this was actually issued in October 1999. It says, following 70 years of intensive excavations in the land of Israel, archaeologists have found out that patriarchs' acts are legendary stories. We did not sojourn in Egypt or make an exodus. We did not conquer the land. Neither is there any mention of the empire of David or Solomon. To those who take an interest, have known these facts for years, but Israel is a stubborn people and doesn't want to hear about it. This is what archaeologists have learned from their excavations in the land of Israel. The Israelites were never in Egypt. They did not wander in the desert, did not conquer the land in a military campaign, did not pass it on to the 12 tribes of Israel. Perhaps even harder to swallow is that the united monarchy of David and Solomon, which is described in the Bible as a regional power, was at most a small tribal kingdom. And it will come as an unpleasant shock to many of the God of Israel, Yahweh, that he actually had a female consort, and that the early Israelite religion adopted monotheism only in the waning period of the monarchy and not at Mount Sinai. I want you to be clear. I could read these all day, family. It has been 40 years since biblical archaeologists have told you that these stories are not actual factual stories. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not just a historian. I'm also a priest. I'm speaking to you primarily as a historian today, but let me speak to you as a priest for a second. Simply saying that something didn't occur in history does not mean that it is not an important concept. But when you try to be so literal, like my dear brother is being, what he's doing is he's actually taking the spirituality out of this text. And that is a grievous error. That is also why when he reads the Kemetic text, he looks for things that are literal. This is a problem. These are clearly not literal characters. Do you think that Ra, who he believes is literal, is a dude with a bird with a sun on his head? Is that what he's arguing? I'm not arguing that, and I'm a proponent of ancient Kemet. So, I know that my time is short. Brother Sa, how much more time is there?
Time is no more.
Okay, wonderful.
It just went
now listen,
out.
I struggled with showing you the images, but I hope that the family was still able to hear.
All right. Well, what you just heard, mute your line, Jabari, so I can make sure.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let's see if do I know how to do that on here? Give me 1 second.
Yeah. All right. So now, with all due respect to this brother, and like I said, I don't disrespect this brother. I honestly honor this brother. But I honestly must tell you the truth. That was a shameful representation of Kemet. One more time, that was shameful. Now, the reason I say that is shameful is because, number one, you ended up in my document before you properly addressed the claims that I gave you. I gave you some very deep assertions. And I know those things are hard to keep up with, but you should be taking notes, brother, because this is a debate. Now, let me recap the things that you said, and then I'm going to go further into my presentation. You said, again, the mistake of saying sodomy as relates to the place in the Bible is only connected through the place. Brother, do you not understand that there is no place named Sodom today, but there is a definition for sodomy? One more time, you said there is no sodomy without Sodom. But I'm telling you, there is no Sodom today, but there are sodomites and the act of sodomy. Clearly, you dropped it on that point. Number two, you dropped the ball on incest, and it was an opportunity to correct and to be honest. The priesthood of Kemet was deeply enthralled in incest. I don't care how hurtful that is to hear it. It is the truth. And it is the truth so much so that that very same incestuous model is reflected in your gods. Case in point, the papyrus of Tamanu that I asserted to you before is written on 3 levels: the pictorial level, the sa.neter, and then the interpretation. The papyrus of Tamanu was not passed around like a newspaper. It was a document, holy document, set apart for a reason. Let me tell you the reason, since my brother Jabari didn't want to tell you. The reason is to teach creation. One more time, y'all. The papyrus of Tamanu is indeed a creation papyri that depicts mass, matter, weather, event, and even as relates to weather event. Listen closely. This is the real priestly teaching concerning that. The first level is the pictorial, an arched body, nut, a man with a penis erect all the way up to the sky, Geb, the earth. The father on the side, Shu, the wind, prime elements of creation: wind, sky, earth. The earth has all of the elements of the creation within it: iron, zinc, phosphorus, all of those things. Moisture and how moisture relates to matter and mass is what Nut depicts as an arched body. And the father, which is Shu. And in every cosmology, there is a tale of a family lineage. That is called omission. Now, when you look at the papyrus of Tamanu, you must understand that without words, without sa.neter, and without an interpretation, it is left up to the eyes of the person looking. Let me speed this up because I want to pack some more into this. You know what the word learning tools are. When you're in lower education, primary school, they give you what are called learning tools to spark things in your mind that you would go on deeper in your research and your study. This is what the papyrus of Tamanu is. It is a simple depiction for a people from ages 0 to all the way up. You don't have to teach them what mass, matter, event, and all of those things are as relates to science and deep science. But as a learning tool, when you show that to the common people in KEMET, they're able to relate that all of these forces are coalescing to come together to form your earth, And it even has aspects of tangible nature in that papyrus, like the ostrich feather. Ostriches don't live in the great by and by, Brother Jabari. So I'm saying to you, either whoever created that papyrus was confused, or they disagree with you and they agree with me that the papyrus itself is a learning tool. But guess what else? It gets deeper. It gets deeper because, again, that I said, incest is a mainstay in Kemetology and the priesthood of Kemet. When you have classism to the degree that you won't even marry outside of your family, that is called by normal people that are saying incest. The papyrus of Tamanu on the textual, pictorial level, the learning tool level, not the quantum level, is incest. I don't care how you look at it, because in the cosmology, Shu is the father of both. Point proven. Incest. Now, how do you not deal with that? You tell everybody, Jabari, that there is questionable presentation about Tamanu, and that you are to learn science not through soft porn, brother, but you learn science through replicable models. You use science and teach it through equation and even linguistic, which you didn't take the time to teach our people. I did just now. And I would go deeper if we had 20 minutes into the papyrus of Tamanu. But let me go deeper into another mainstay. Again, the 22nd confession of Ma'at is violated in the same book that it is written in by the god called Osiris. Now, let me remind you, on plate 7A and 7B, where it talks about copulating, if you do it with yourself, it is wrong, brother. There is no creation without Ba-Ka, but also male and female. Yes, yes, yes. And so when I told your brother Jehuti that these Neteru are androgynous, he didn't even know the word definition, obviously. Because if you have your penis in your mouth swallowing semen, you obviously must be a woman also on the inside. The principle and the textual level is the same. You can't get away from it. Also, most of the neter principles that are depicted as beings, not inanimate objects like the sun, are depicted with one male titty and one female breast. Jabari,
2 minutes.
Okay, a Tim is depicted that way. And so is all of the other Neteru that are giving birth and creating life through themselves. Like Ray. Ray chooses to cut his penis, phallic cutting, to drip blood. But the blood, life is in the blood. But where is the coupling factor? Where is the female and male principle? It is in these people. It is present. And that makes them androgynous. And it also makes them literal. Because they not only have, again, you so badly pointed out, brother, they have souls. Osiris is the soul of Ra. And also, Hunefer Papri and the Papri Ani proves what I say when you look at the end of the hymn to Osiris. It joins Ani's Ka with Osiris's Ba. Let me say that one more time. In the Papyrus of Ani, the literal man Ani is joined with the literal soul of Osiris. He is called Osiris Ani. Same in the Papyrus of Hunefer. And the same with every rich person that was in Kemet that died. They all had a different understanding than you do. These people had souls. They had offerings. They ate. They talked. They ruled, even with a crown. Atem and Osiris.
Time.
In my closing statement. Closing statement.
Go ahead, brother.
Closing statement. Huh?
Go ahead.
Closing statement. Okay. The particular papyri right here is 7a. 7a talks about something very, very precarious that this brother will not bring to you. It talks about the relationship of Osiris and Atem as relates to Ra. One more time, Atem and Osiris as relates to them both sharing Ra as a mode of communication. You didn't tell us about that, Jabari. But the papyrus says the Ba of Osiris, the soul, tomorrow, yesterday, and all, brother. This is all literal. And I'm going to dig in more because we haven't got to the worst part yet.
Mute your mic, please, Brother Michael. We don't have issues.
Brother,
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me get it right now.
Mute your
it is
mic.
4:29. Let's go.
Okay, I want to say really quickly that it's hard to eat. Some of this is so difficult to listen to that I want to try to deal with it seriously. But one of the first things you have to understand is simply saying the word literal doesn't make it literal. I mean, just because you say this is literal doesn't mean it's literal. You have to prove it in a debate, brother. And you have not even attempted to do that. Maybe you're not aware of how to do that. By the way, even if you knew how to do that, you wouldn't be able to, because this is really clear that this is not a literal story. I don't even understand why you would say that. Now, by the way, I'm going to try to deal with 5 major points really quickly. First of all, I want to be clear that when I say sodomy, I want you to know that the word sodomy comes from the Kemetic, the ancient, I don't even know if I should even call it ancient, the biblical description of this particular land. That's where the word comes from. Just because the land is not there today doesn't mean that they're not referencing a biblical description. By the way, many of the lands that are described in the Bible are not there. Several of them are mythological. So I'm not sure why you think that that's a point here. By the way, he believes that sodomy occurs because we are talking about a deity that takes his seed into his own hand. I want you to be clear that if you were looking at this linearly, that would sound very bizarre. But you have to understand that you're not talking about a human being. You're talking about energy. And because you're talking about energy, it doesn't work according to the same laws. They're talking to you about how the actual stuff of the world was created. So I don't know if you can see this, family. I want to read. I really hope you can see this. This is a slide that comes from the book of knowing the evolutions of Ra and overthrowing of Heth. And because I don't know if you can read it, I'm going to just read this small piece really quickly. It talks about how Ra actually closes his hand and receives his seed, and he embraces his shadow as a wife. He poured the seed into his mouth, and from there, he created the gods, Shu and Tefnut. By the way, Shu, I told you, is air. Tefnut is the moisture quality. So what you're really talking about is how the world was created. Don't be so literal. We're not talking about real semen. Semen comes from human beings. We're talking about seed. What is a seed? A seed is the microcosm of the organism that it represents. They are saying that this divine character is able to create all things from himself. Now, let's be clear. You don't even recognize that that would be a challenge in the Kemetic tradition because your tradition is patriarchal. In our tradition, they saying himself would say, wait a minute. If there has to be male and female energy, how could there be just a male? In this instance, they want to tell you that female energy is so important that even the hand that receives the seed is female. That's what they're trying to say. Now, you have to understand that these teachings come to us from people who studied the divine energy for over 40 years. This was not something that they would teach on a street corner. If they did, folks who have little understanding like yourself would be confused. This is about how energy occurs. By the way, when you talk about science, you're talking about something that comes from KEMET. Even the field of chemistry was called alchemy. It was a reference to KEMET. So don't school me about science. Learn your traditions. They're not my traditions, they're our traditions, but you're confused. And so that is the challenge we have. By the way, he talks about incest. I know I don't have a lot of time. I really want to get to this really quickly. He talks about incest. I don't even know if you can see this slide, but I want you to be clear that incest is all, oh wait, I'm not going to show you this one yet. I'm going to get to that one next. I want you to understand that incest is all throughout the Bible. Now, these are mythological characters, right? They're not literal people, but Abraham marries his half-sister, right? And Deuteronomy, which is the book of laws that describe what is appropriate, doesn't seem to prohibit sex between a father and a daughter. Abraham's brother married his niece. By the way, if you want to do something really bizarre, now you got to look at me for this one, family. One of the claims that Brother Michael makes in one of the many videos that he puts forward is that he actually says that in Kemet, mothers had sex with their sons. Brother Michael, I challenge you to find me when a royal family did that. Usually when things that we might consider incest today occurred, you would see a half-brother marry a half-sister. That's how it occurred. And it was like that in much of the ancient world, not just in Kemet. And if you think that that's funny, first of all, you're not going to find parents being intimate with their children, but you will in the Bible. How about you tell me about the story of Lot's daughters who intoxicate their father so they could take his seed in Genesis 19 verses 30 to 38. What do you, I don't understand what you're talking about here. These things happen in your Bible. You should be more familiar with your text than I am. You have to understand that incest is in many different places. And Lot is a really interesting character because even in a description of when angels come and visit him as visitors, and there is a mob of crazed people who want to have sex with those angels, Lot doesn't defend them by saying, I'm going to fight for your honor. Guess what Lot does? Lot offers the mob his virgin daughters. What is that about? You have to explain to me, brother, if that is not sexual incongruity, if that is not the most vile action in your Bible. By the way, I'm not going to even tell you, for those who are not familiar with the Bible, who Lot is. Lot is a very important character, related to an even more important character. We're not talking about minor characters in a tradition. And you, brother, think this is literal. I would argue to you that Lot is even a myth. Lot did not exist. But if you want to be literal, then you literally deal with the challenges in your own text. I'm telling you that this is not literal. How about the Levite that has a sex slave in the Bible. How about that story? And he actually, and once again, there's a mob of people looking to have sex with men. This happens a lot in your text. And what does this Levite do? He sends them his concubine, his sex slave, and she is actually raped all night long. In the morning, when he opens his door, he finds her at the doorstep. What does he do? He doesn't say, I have transgressed against our laws. I have done wrong to this woman. Forgive me, Creator. He eviscerates her. He cuts her apart. You have to understand that your text has many, many more challenges with sexuality than the ancient Kemetic text. So please, if you live in a glass hut, don't throw stones. This is a real problem for you, brother. And then he wants to talk about the case of penis cutting. Now, I'm going to tell you that the penis or the henanu is not literal. In this instance, we're talking about the henanu of Ra. Ra's the sun. We're talking about how energy, the phallus in this instance, the henanu, is a procreative device. The sun doesn't have a penis. Do you think the sun has a penis? Why don't you go outside and look at the sun, Brother Michael? See if you see a penis or a vagina. This is about energy. So when they say they cut the penis and the blood comes forth, your Kemetic ancestors did not have the hang-ups with their body that the Tom...
2 minutes!
And
God damn, man. Yo, this is classic work. sa.neter digging in the crates. Yo, man, I was just going through my crates, looking in my chest, my war chest, and I came up with a few of them. I came up with this one. I came up with other ones. And I was like, yo, I think I should show this. This is a minute ago. Jabari is digging in his chest. That's why you Christians, that's why you Israelites should be very careful about what y'all always criticize about Kemet. God damn, Jabari killed it. Killed it. Y'all should really be quiet when you talk about incest and homosexuality and all this old crazy stuff. Killed it. Laid it to bed.
because, yes, and because you're following their traditions and you haven't re-Africanized your tradition, you are making the same errors that they're making. And that's the reason why you're confused. But let's talk about penis cutting. What about this one in the Bible? In Deuteronomy, it says, circumcise your heart and stiffen your neck no longer. What is that about? How about 1 Samuel, where Saul asked for a dowry? He asked David for a dowry, and he tells him he wants him to bring him the foreskins of 200 Philistines. And David actually does it. By the way, this image is an image of David.
What?
It's an image created later. I don't want to give you the impression it was actually in the Bible, but it's an image of David presenting Saul with the foreskins of 200 Philistines. You have no ability to challenge me in this issue, brother. By the way, you even said that creation is about male and female. Then why in the world, in your tradition, you have deities that do not have female consorts? How do you create in the world?
Yo, man, this is why y'all should really be careful, man. The stuff that y'all say can come back to haunt you, can come back to bite you. Damn, everything you say in Jabari is hitting you in the head with headshots. Coming right back at you using your own scripture in your Bible. See, y'all don't know your Bible, man. How can you say these things, Michael Edwards, when it is all in your Bible, bro? Jabari killing them with this, man. I'm digging in the crates, man. I'm going back to the old debates where Jabari was raw with it. He's still raw with it now, but that's when he was really going all the way in that Bible. Now he don't really want to hurt nobody's feelings. You know, he's lighting up a little bit, but you can get him back to that rawness if you keep on trying to go at him and dig, go at him. Trust me.
World this way with a son, a father, and a bird, a ghost. I'm teasing you when I say a bird. I understand that's the Holy Ghost. Early Christians often believed that the ghost was feminine. Those Christians were eviscerated, were annihilated. They don't exist anymore. So generally it's believed that those are male forces. If you want to say that something bizarre is going on sexually to create the world, deal with your tradition. How do you have three male forces creating? If you have three male forces creating, is that not what you would consider sodomy, brother? Be very careful here. You are disrespecting your ancestors. And it's sad that you haven't even taken the time to truly understand the traditions that you speak of. You read one or maybe two books. Brother, you have to do much more reading in order to come with this in any sort of understanding.
Let me tell y'all, Jabari probably don't know this, but after this debate, Michael Edwards was so mad that he went outside, he called me to watch the video that he did live. He took it down a long time ago, and he threw the book of Egyptian book Coming Forth by Day and by Night in the trash, and he poured some oil on it, some little, you know what you like have do cookouts with, and then he lit the book on fire. He was so mad. I said, what is that doing, bro? All you're doing is limiting your own knowledge, man. Get the knowledge out of it if you want to talk about KEMET. But he burned the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I was like, damn, man. Jabari really hurt that boy.
Now, Brother Sa, how much more time do I have? Do I have more time to show you anything else?
Tom, you got 1 minute grace period. Let's go.
Let me say this. I'm not even take a full minute. Take a look at this image. You are seeing Ast, Asar, and Heru. In ancient KEMET and as well in all of ancient Africa and much of the ancient world, not just in Africa, because many of those traditions came from KEMET. You actually see male, female, and child. And I'm going to tell you something else. You want to mention Elohim, you better understand that that comes from El. I know you guys are going to say it's power, but why would you call a pagan deity power? El is the word of an earlier Canaanite deity who had Asherah. El had a wife. Maybe you would be better off going back to that tradition than the patriarchal, literal tradition that you're in. With that, I'm done.
All right. Well, again.
Hold up, Michael.
Yo,
I want you to.
Is with these people. They would rather have me, a learned Israelite priest, come and teach you the papyrus of Ani and teach you the Bible. That's a shame. It's a shame that you wouldn't come with what is called science. You call this stuff science, but you're only making up stuff and freestyling. You haven't shown me one bit of methodology. You haven't spoken one word of sa.neter, and you have not read more than one paragraph of your text. Horrible. One more time, just out of love, horrible representation of KEMET science. If you represent a science, you teach the science. You don't start pointing fingers. Now, if you want me to teach the Bible to you, I'll do that. But guess what? I'm not a master of omission. Brother, I'm going to start with your biblical questions. And I'm going to show you how simple it is to own up to your books, to not hide and omit. The book of wisdom in the Apocrypha, in the Septuagint, this one, the African Bible, okay? The one that was created right in your land by your kings. And I know you don't want to accept the Ptolemaic dynasty, but just like all the other honkies that came into KEMET throughout all of the dynasties, you got to accept Philadelphus, sa.neter, and all of the other nutbags that wanted to politicize culture, that wanted to politicize truth and priesthood. So we come up with this book, but this book is your death. You just asserted that my God doesn't follow the creation model that he himself set up. You don't know what you're talking about. The book of Genesis relates that human, Adam, not just the Adam and Eve that you know, or Adam and Hawa, but human, man, is a conglomerate principle. One more time. A conglomerate principle of female and male. In his image created he them. Male and female created he them. In the book of Genesis, there's only one mention of one creation that is embodied in the man Adam. In him is a female principle. This is what Genesis 2 relates to when it says that the rib was drawn from man, and there lies a woman called Hawa, the mother of all living. What are you talking about? Female principle in the book of Apocrypha that talks about the Hokmah, or the wisdom of the Elohim, the great power, is related to as a she. Jabari, you haven't been through school, through any seminary, if you haven't read this document. If you're only talking about the majority text, you're tripping. This is the African Bible, my brother. All right, now let's move on a little bit further. El, the same term that I told my brother Zion. I want to hurry up because I want to hit you. I want to get you back in what you won't teach. But I'm showing you what priests do. We don't back up. El is indeed a Canaanite term. But listen, think. The Bible in the book of Joshua says that Joshua and all of the Israelite tribes did what? Cleaned out Canaan. You heard me? Because of giantism and genetic maladies. And so they indeed became Canaanites because of where they lived and where they took kingdom up at. Now, if they're Canaanites, then that should tell you a whole, that story should smack differently. It should smack differently, but maybe not to a master of omission. So let me move on because I don't want to get too deeply enthralled in the Bible, bro. You said El. El is a Canaanite deity, but El is just a title. In the book of Psalms and in two other places in the Bible, it talks about this. El stands in the congregation of the mighty. Do you know what that means? In English or in Hebrew? I'm assured that you don't. El is a title, a descriptive title that talks about powers. So again, the generic term that we use, God, can be assigned to El. My friend Moshe was called El Moshe in the Torah. In English, I will make you a god to Pharaoh. El Moshe, a title. There's nothing to hide. That's why I told Zion, why are you hiding that? Don't run from this stuff. The Bible qualifies everything. Now, I just shot you down out of my book, but now let me shoot you down out of yours. Autofellatio, I don't care how you want to put it. Here's the litmus test. If autofellatio is okay, let me see you teach it to your baby. Let me see you teach your child creation and how prime man was created and all of the greatness that is within the prime man, which is us. You teach it through a man flipped over on his back in a C shape with his penis jammed down his throat and another male entity over him with a penis as long as his upper body. If you did that, you'd be in prison next to Dr. York. But that's what's in your books. That's what's in your books. And let me tell you, you can't metaphysically copulate, bro. The 22nd Confession of Ma'at talks about wrongful copulation. That's not masturbation. You fooled Tazariak. Tazariak don't understand what you do. but I do. You're talking about masturbation. I'm talking about copulation, the thing that makes you a sodomite. Grabbing your member is not sucking your own penis.
1 minute, Mike.
Mike is funny as hell. Mike is crazy. None of them understand the story.
All right, and I'm gonna end the 1 minute with this reading again that the brothers keeps running from. Autofellatio, 22, Declaration of Innocence, no wrongful copulation. But here you have Ray, the soul, the praise. Osiris, the soul, and the praise of Ray. You have him depicted giving himself head. Then on the papyrus of Hinutawi, there is 2 witnesses. Osiris doing it here and Geb doing it there. And you're going to tell us that ain't literal? How disrespectful to these people can you be? How disrespectful to children can you be that may want to learn the arts of science through ancient culture, but you won't even tell them some of this shit ain't right. There was insane people dealing with these things. Geb doing it over here, Osiris doing it over there, Ray's in the corner somewhere cutting his penis. And it's all written in a book. And you're telling us it's science, but you're giving us no equation. How do you build a pyramid with cutting your penis and giving yourself autofellatio, metaphysically or literally? How do you do that? When the book says you have a soul, the Ba and the Ka, the Nefesh and the Ruach from both of these cultures cohabitating speak of the same literality.
Time.
You're playing games.
Time.
What's the time you got? Let's see. It's 4:51. Is that what you got?
It's the time. 4:51.
Okay.
Let's
now,
go.
Let me say to you that there are a lot of more important conversations that we could have with regard to our traditions. I'm a little tired continually talking about sexuality with Hebrew Israelites. And perhaps one of the reasons why this is a major thing to them is because we are talking about a tradition that was given to us by Europeans who have issues with their body. In your Kemetic tradition, you thought your body was sacred. If you actually read the deification of the members in the Kemetic text, it actually says to you, for example, I want you to look at plate 32, by the way. Read this for a quick second here. My face is of Ra, my 2 eyes are of Het Heru, my 2 ears are of Apuwat, my nose is of Kent Sheps, my 2 limbs are of Anhu, my teeth are of Keperah, my neck is of Asta Divine, my 2 hands are of Kemenu, Lord of Tatu. I'm going to jump down because I want you to hear this. My backbone is of Set, my Henanu is of Asar. I want you to understand, and it goes to other portions of the body as well. Okay, and I'm reading this with the book with the glyphs. I like reading the ones with the glyphs so that you can actually look to see whether the Tom who translated it correctly. You can read it yourself. And so I want to say to you that you have to understand we're dealing with symbolism, but the symbol, the really important concept that you're missing is that all portions of your body are divine. That's the human principle you should get. And in terms of you not being clear about exactly how this occurs with the divine forces using their henanu and using their henanet, the vagina, to create the world, I don't know how you're confused about that. Perhaps you're confused because all you've looked at is you've looked at 3 men creating the universe. If 3 men created the universe, what kind of intercourse were they having, Brother Michael? You have not answered that. I don't know why you continue to make these mistakes. By the way, I don't even know if you, I don't know why you think you answered a question. You didn't come close to answering the question. You say here that when I tell you that your creators have to be male and female, according to your own description, And according to the ancient African model, you actually said, well, you don't understand that human is a conglomerate principle. I'm not talking about humans. I know there are women. I'm married to a wife. I'm actually talking about your creator who is male. How are you confused about that? You didn't even come close to answering that question. You didn't even attempt to answer that question because you can't answer the question. And so I want you to listen carefully and understand. By the way, you are actually saying that the Israelites cleaned out the Canaanites. I want you to be clear that that is not what the archaeological record tells us. That's what the biblical record tells us. But you have to understand that the Bible is not a history book. It's a book that has some history in it. I'll give you that. But if you think that that makes it a history book, then you think the movie Braveheart is a documentary. You have to understand that the Bible does not give us history in the classical sense. And that most of the people that you're talking about, probably up until almost Ezra, are people that did not actually exist. They are people who are not literal characters. So let me read from Reconstructing let me read you another piece here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this is from McNutt. And I want you to hear that, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, I don't have the time. But they're saying that the Babylonians come later. And that as we mentioned that Abraham is coming out of Ur of the Chaldeans, what they're doing is they're giving you an anachronism. Why is there an anachronism? Because you have to understand that this is not a historical story. There's so many different sources that are telling you that now. As long as you continue to look at it as a historical story, you're going to misinterpret your own text. And the reason why you're doing that is because the Europeans are telling you that. And I don't know why you don't recognize that simply saying that there's an African Bible. Show me how that Bible is African, brother. Show me how that Bible is African. I really want you to understand that all of those traditions were curated. I'm not saying that there weren't Africans that weren't involved in the creation of some of the early books. I'm a historian. I can tell you who some of those people were. But you must understand that the book that you have received is not the book that you think it is. The book that you have received is one that was actually utilized and curated by Tom Who. So take a look at this one. By the way, Moses being a historical character, we know that there were many, many Moses. I wish that I could go and read you more. Look at this one. This is the one I want you to read. Most histories of ancient Israel no longer consider information about the Egyptian sojourn, the Exodus, and the wilderness wanderings recoverable or even relevant to history's emergence, to Israel's emergence. Most important is the fact that no clear extra biblical evidence exists for any aspect of the Egyptian sojourn, Exodus, or wilderness wanderings. By the way, that's by Moore and Kelly in 2011. It's called Biblical History and Israel's Past, the changing study of the Bible and history. Brother, I could give you sources all day long. I almost feel like I shouldn't actually use my sources because there are going to be others of you that are going to want to engage in this debate. And I don't want to share all my sources because you're just reading things that you don't understand. And I don't get why you aren't listening. You want to just say that these individuals are actually historical characters. Why? You haven't told us why they are. Because they say they have a soul? By the way, you have to understand that in KEMET, there were 5 portions of the soul, not 2. You're only able to mention the Ba and the Ka because you're not familiar with the inter teachings. I am willing to teach you that. I'm willing to teach you that. But you have to be willing to receive it. And without being willing to receive it, I don't know what we're doing here. By the way, you never even talked about incest. The incest that's all throughout the Bible. Why didn't you even address that? You haven't addressed anything that I said. And I don't know how I can continue with someone who simply thinks that saying the word literal makes something literal. Why is it literal? I've told you about how Asar behaves. I've told you about how Ra behaves. You know that Shu and Geb are the air and the earth, respectively. This is not hard for you to do research on. The problem is that you were doing research to try to defend something. All you need to do is actually read the sources. I'm not saying to you that your Bible is ridiculous and you should discard it. I'm saying you have to re-Africanize it. I'm not saying you can't be Hebrew Israelite or a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim for that matter.
2 minutes.
If you're going to be an African, you have to be able to return to your African sources.
2
Without
minutes.
returning to your African sources, what are you doing? This story about KEMET, about Israel actually not being a historical space for all of the patriarchs is something that has been settled for 40 years. I gave you a source initially that was quite early, and I just gave you a source from 2011. This has been settled for 40 years. Speak to any of the biblical or the Torah teachers. You said that I haven't gone to any sort of seminary. You don't know what my training is. You don't know that much about me. So how do you know what my training is? So this is something that you need to be able to do more research to understand. Brother, I love you, but please don't continue to be misguided and insult our ancestors. As long as you do that, as long as you will speak ill of our ancestors, as long as you go against ancient Africa, you will lose. It's that simple. I'm done.
Now, again, you saw more terrible scholarship. Terrible. I'm going to give you what is called primary resources. So y'all can get off the pot and stop, mute your line, sa.neter, so that y'all can get off the pot. Stop disrespecting yourselves and disrespecting the people, telling them that the Israelites don't have proof of our existence. Brother, that's sad and it's disrespectful to the viewers, not to me, because I know better. When you look at King Hezekiah, just like Taharka was a multi-province king, King Hezekiah was a vassal. And King Hezekiah has inscriptions underground, still today, of a specific waterway. It is called the Siloam inscription. I read the whole damn thing for Garfield A. Reed a few years ago. That is a rock solid primary that proves the existence of King Hezekiah, that proves the existence of his cultural connection with Kemet and Canaan. And it also proves the existence of that people. Let's also give you the Gezer calendar, Gezer. It is a calendar that's in the Sinaitic script that deals with the Hebrew oral traditions of the calendar that we keep, which is not just solar or lunar, it's both. So the Gezer calendar is a calendar that is for pulling flax and wheat. Real agriculture. Now, waterways, agriculture, cultural ties to other lands. Brother, you should never let that word pass through your mouth again, that the Israelites aren't real, because you stuck on Finkelstein and Haaretz, a Juba newspaper, and a terrible scholar himself. I just smashed that. You should never do that again. Now, you said that I continuously disrespect the ancestors. You made another boo-boo. I said that Osiris is literal. You just called him your ancestor. I said Osiris has a soul. You just called him your ancestor. Who else are you talking about? Because in this conversation, it's all framed around the neteru. You calling them your ancestors now? How are they not literal? I don't think you know what you believe. And you're just like the woman that came to Jesus Christ. But Christ told her, that lady, you know not what you worship. But the time and day will come when the true worshipers, and that time is now and was even then. Brother, God is looking for those that will worship him in spirit and truth, not manipulation, not omission, and not you sitting up here making a shame of your culture because you have disrespected the ancestors. You won't teach them. You won't even say that they're literal. But out of the same double tongue, you call them ancestors. That's called insanity, Jabari. And that is pseudo scholarship at its finest, my dear brother. Now, let me give you another aspect of literality and prime proof about the Israelite culture, since you want to get out of y'all stuff and into the Bible. But that's where I excel, baby. Right on the cover of this book, I talked to Dr. Williams about it, Professor Williams, which I respect to the hilt. I honor that brother. And I honor sa.neter for bringing me and putting me in the ring with him. Coins. I talked to Saka Amos about this. Ayudea Kata. The capture of my people, the Judeans.
1 minute, brother, 1 minute.
The capture of my people that you said are fake. That Finkelstein and all these other devilish Edomites will not acquiesce with, because the minute they do, they will give you this word again, literal. That the Torah is of a literal living people, and they ain't white, Jabari. You disrespect your ancestors that lived in Kemet with my ancestors when you go listen to Finkelstein, when you won't teach the Papyrus of Talmud, and when you won't say that everybody in Kemet wasn't sane, because that's the truth. Everybody wasn't sane. There were some dynasties that were crazy, and you won't even present it. Now, I know this hurts, but I'm going to tell you, brother, when we get together, I'm going to take this up to the stratosphere, because this is just the opening. You don't know what we deal with, brother. And you continuously say, last statement, that we don't read. Bruh, that's all I do is read and teach. My life is to be a teacher and an open book.
I just have to say to you, to the family, that I'm not sure what Brother Michael was listening to. He made 3 assertions that I never made. I never said any of the things that he just said. Who are you debating? Are you on another YouTube channel? Because first of all, I never said that the Israelites don't have proof of their existence. I never said that to you. How could I say that? That would be ridiculous. I said that there's no proof of the patriarchs. Maybe he doesn't know who the patriarchs are. Brother, you are debating with a historian. I'm not just a Kemetic priest who reads Kemetic spiritual text all day long. I read history. I would never say to you Hezekiah didn't exist. Why would I say that? You need to understand, oh boy, you need to understand that I actually will argue that Hezekiah did exist, that Hezekiah was an actual person. But Hezekiah is not Moses, not Abraham. Hezekiah is not Joshua. Hezekiah is not David. Hezekiah is not Solomon. Hezekiah comes after. I even said to you that it's possible that everyone before Ezra was mythological. Ezra comes before Hezekiah. Why are you not listening? You need to know your own history. So let's be really clear. I'm not arguing that Hezekiah, I know that Hezekiah built a waterway. I'm familiar with it. I'm not talking about Hezekiah. I'm talking about those individuals that came earlier being mythological. And the reason why I mention is because you are saying that all of these traditions must be literal. Of my tradition and much of your tradition is mythological. That was the point. I think you lost it. So I don't understand where you're going there. Then you said that I said that Asar is mythological, and then I called him an ancestor. I never said Asar was an ancestor. Where did you hear that? I said you're disrespecting your ancestors because you are disrespecting, and he unmutes to laugh. That's really disrespectful. But you are disrespecting the greatest wisdom of African people who gave civilization to the world. That's what I'm saying. I never said Asar is an ancestor. Asar is a neter. He's one of the neteru. So you're confused. And then you said that I said that the Hebrews were white. I think that it's likely that some of the Hebrew people, if not all the Hebrew people, were people of color. I think that some of the record is still unclear about whether they were an African people in the sense that we would use African today. But even if I was willing to say to you that they were people of African descent, what I'm saying to you is that you're reading texts that were manipulated by Europeans. That is a fact. That is a fact. Look at the Council of Nicaea. Look at, there's several councils of Nicaea. Look at the actions of Constantine. I could go on and on and on. Theodosius. Maybe these are names that you don't know because you're not reading history. You're just reading the Bible. You have to read history to understand, and even to step into the ring with me. Right now, you're still on the outside of the ring looking in. And I warmed up. I've been shadow boxing myself. You have to actually respond to what I'm saying, brother. You can't just respond to someone who isn't here. That's not how this works. So please, if we're going to meet again, and I'm willing to do that, you have to do some more historical study. Don't just read the Bible. I didn't just read from you from the book of Coming Forth by Day. I didn't just show you Kemetic text. This is a historical debate as well. Maybe you're not clear about the aspect of this that is historical. I'm a historian and a priest. So I'm not talking to you primarily as a priest today. In fact, I even told you when I was talking about talking as a priest. I'm talking to you as a historian. And perhaps that's the reason why you are unclear about the parameters for debate. How could we debate our spiritual text? You don't debate spiritual text. You debate history. You have to debate facts. You can't debate what someone believes or myth. You can say whether a myth is actually apropos for a people. You could do that. But to debate myth as if it's history, what kind of activity is that? Dear brother, you can't just read two Kemetic texts. And you have to understand there are many. There are many. You can't just read two Kemetic texts and think you can jump in the ring with someone who is a historian, who has made 13 trips to the region, who has traveled extensively in Africa, who has seen the sites himself, who reads the text himself. You can't do this. You can't just come with me with the Bible. I would never disrespect you by just coming to you with my spiritual text. So you're not prepared for this discussion. And I'm saying that to you with love, because I want you to teach me. But right now, you're not able to teach me. Right now, all you can do is spout things that you heard in your worship service. You have to do more than that if you're going to be talking to our people about how we move forward in power. Peace.
All right, my brothers. You can keep your mic open, Jabari.
Okay.
What I want to say real quick, we down for the questions. The first question I have for you, Michael, because I got a show. I have a question for you, Michael. Within 2 minutes, and that's a long time. Can you give us an overview of the creation story of your Most High? Give us a creation story. Can you break that down real quick?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
In the beginning is the prime story of science. Mass. Close your lines, Jabari. Come up, brother, quickly, please.
What was that?
Close your lines so they can hear me clearly. Close your line.
Oh, I thought you said to keep my mic off. I can. I'm sorry.
Just yeah. Okay, so when you look at Genesis chapter 1, you will see very prime elements, and some of the elements you may not want to agree with, but you will definitely see energy, kinetic energy even. You will definitely see water. You will definitely see darkness. and you will definitely see light. All of those things are aspects of creation that are not even dealt with on the Papyrus of Tamanu. The Papyrus of Tamanu only deals with physicality in creation, but electricity, kinetic energy, is not physical because you can't physically weigh it. It has no weight. You looking like that right there, but I got a biology book over there, and I got several other books that agree with what I'm saying. Now, again, the science of creation is just what I said, and it is in the book of Genesis. Darkness, light, water, motion or energy, kinetic energy, and most of all, consciousness, which is called wisdom, Chokhmah, or light. That's why you have two mentions of let us create light in the Bible. When you don't read Hebrew, then you may misunderstand it. But the first mention of light in Genesis chapter 1 is the light of wisdom, not the light of, the darkness that is ignorance. So you have two mentions of light. One is ray, and the other is wisdom.
I want you to give your creation story and talk about Geb, and will you teach that to your children about Geb? Because this is what the Hebrews always say. Will you teach this story to your children? You got 2 quick minutes. Go, brother.
Let me say very clearly that because the Kemetic people never actually argued that this was a literal story, there are at least 4 major creation stories. It's not simply one, because we're talking about how energy occurs, and each of the stories actually describe different sections of this. So let me talk for a second about Geb. I want to be really clear that in our tradition, the manner that the way this occurs is you see the divine entity create a firmament over the waters, over the great waters. And in that firmament, he says, Ma'at is with him. The feminine principle of the universe is with him. And from there, he begins to take his seed. By the way, when you talk about going into his mouth, they're actually saying something similar than that's in your Bible, but you don't seem to understand this. When they say the word becomes manifest, the reason why they use the word mouth is because mouth is where you speak from. So what they're talking about is the ability to create with your word, the ability to be your word. Let's be clear. Brothers, right in my hood say, my word is born. My word is born? That's what they're trying to refer to. An ancient African principle that is still in the echoes of our understanding. And so as these divine characters become created, we see Shu and Tefnut. Shu is the air, Tefnut is the water. And then we see Shu and Tefnut give birth to Nut, the heavens, and Geb, the earth. And Nut and Geb are one until Shu separates them. And then in some instances, some descriptions of this, you see the tears that become the rest of humanity. I'm actually describing a lengthy story, one of the lengthy stories. This is the story that comes from a place known as Iunu. Iunu is a place where it comes from in that manner. But you have to understand that the rest of creation occurs completely and totally through what you would think of as a human, almost human reproduction. So the neteru, from there, there are many trinities in Kemet. All of them are always male, female, and child. That's how it occurs because we believe in divine family. That's the reason why the Ankh looks this way. It's the reason why it has the womb and the henanum and then the children. Everything that we believe is based on divine family.
All right, brother Mike, to you, my brother. I want Jabari to ask Michael a question, and then after that, when you finish answering the question, Mike, I want you to proceed by asking Jabari a question. So go ahead, brother Mike. Jabari, is on you.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I have, is it just one question? Because he didn't answer any of my questions. Well, let me answer a simple question.
You're going to be able to ask another question. Just ask this one, and then y'all going to keep going back.
Here's a simple question. He actually speaks about Haaretz and Finkelstein, but of people's work without reading them. Finkelstein and Haaretz have no problem with the existence of Hezekiah. So you're speaking ill of this scholar simply because he argues that all of the tradition before Ezra or around there is mythological. By the way, he's not the only one that's arguing that. He's not. He's not the only one arguing. I gave you 4 other sources. So what you actually have to understand, here's my question. Have you read Israel Finkelstein's work? And are you familiar with the Biblical Archaeology magazine? What have you read of them?
Brother, if I tell you the main source where Finkelstein's work is propagated through, which is Haaretz newspaper in Jubug land, you should understand that I know who Finkelstein is. And when you say read someone's work, listen, Jabari, look at me. If you're a scholar and a priest, you know that you got to be more specific than saying, have I read Finkelstein? Jabari, brother, you keep on making the most terrible mistakes. You're looking at the top of the food chain in your face and you making the worst mistakes, bro. The worst mistakes. Now, again, any question that you want me to answer, I will answer, but you have to open your head up. When I told you about incest, I answered your question. When I told you about Canaan, I answered your question. But when I told you about autofellatio, you went in the Bible. See, there's a big difference between your responses and mine. Mine are linear, my thoughts are structured, and they come from both cultures, not just one. Now, let me help you. When you bring someone as low on the totem pole as relates to actuality as Finkelstein, or anybody that is foolish enough to bring Jewish religion to an Israelite conversation, you have let me know that you have lost your scope of reality. If the Torah and the Bible in Africa produced these people, what are you talking about Finkelstein to me for? Why are you bringing some white man to a black man about a black land and a black family? See, this is what's wrong with you. You assume too much and you don't listen. You keep on saying that we need to read. But brother, for 5 years, I've been studying your document. We read everything. I have read even the wars of the Jews in this big old book.
All right, hold up, Mike.
I asked him a simple question. I asked him, you can't simply just say that someone's work is foolish just because of their ethnicity. There are no African people doing archaeological work in that region. Browder, who was in KEMET, whose site, by the way, I've visited at least 7 times. So I want you to hear that I didn't ask him whether he thought the work was worth anything.
You gonna get the mic back?
I asked him whether he had read the work. He didn't even name the work. Something that he said that he didn't want to look at his work. I asked him, I said, he made an erroneous comment about the man's work. He said that the proof that the Israelites existed is some of the work of Hezekiah. Finkelstein and others have no problem with Hezekiah. There's a material archaeological culture for Hezekiah, for King Hezekiah. No one disputes whether Hezekiah was alive. I'm talking about the patriarchs. Maybe he doesn't know what that phrase references in biblical archaeology, not even the archaeology of ancient Kemet. In biblical archaeology, you cannot come to this debate simply with one book and a poor understanding of a Kemetic text. You can't do that. If you do that, you're going to be confused. So I don't know what to say. He hasn't read any of the stuff. So he has to read it and then tell me what his problems are. That's all. That's what I wanted to know. I want to know what your problems are, Brother Mike. Read the text.
Keep talking, man. Keep talking till I get him in, man. Because
so that's part of my challenge. If you have an issue with someone's work, you should read it and be able to critique it. That, you know, some folks got upset that I actually critiqued Brother Zion Lex's work. That's what scholarship is. That scholarship is about looking at sources, looking at particularly when we're talking about history, looking at archaeological evidence, looking at textual evidence, looking at several different sources, trying to see what actually fits into the historical record. You can't do that if you don't even read the work and just simply call him a white man. So if you're doing that, then all of the archaeology is out of the window. Don't you think that I think that some of these archaeologists, these archaeologists are actually biased? I actually believe that. I would argue that some of their work is very poor, but you have to read the work in order to make that argument. You can't just say it just simply because he's a Tomhu. That doesn't make any sense. So I want you to read his book. I'm not even tell you the name. Half the people in the chat room probably know the name of the text. But the fact that Brother Mike didn't even reference the text, what does that mean? You heard some other Hebrew folks in debates mention Finkelstein. And so you thought you could just use some of the same debates they use. But they read the work. Zion Lex has read not Zion Lex, I'm sorry. Divine Prospect has read the work. That's the reason why I was disappointed in the fact that he wasn't honest about some of the things he said, because he said some things on video, then didn't want to say them in public. But let's be clear, I enjoyed that debate. I learned things from my debate with Divine Prospect because he read the text.
Brother, when I say something, you can't override me. I'm coming.
You gotta read the text. And if you don't read the text, then you can't really refute them. Not simply because they're Europeans. Until we are able to pay for all those people to be able to go into those areas and do the archaeological work ourselves and control the narrative in the entire region, then you have to read and try to understand what others are doing and try to see if they're simply trying to articulate things that are proven by the material culture. That's what you have to do. Sometimes their interpretation of the material culture is shifted, is skewed. I understand that that happens. So then articulate why it's skewed. You have to read the work. He didn't answer almost none of the questions. He said, I didn't talk about incest. I showed you a slide and I read from the slide. I mentioned at least 6 or 7 instances where incest occurs in the Bible. I talked about the fact that when you're talking about mythological characters and you say that there's incest, how can it be incest when you're talking about the sun? How can it be incest when you're talking about the heavens and the earth? There's incest between the heavens and the earth? How does that happen? I don't know if he understands what he's saying. And so he needs to do more research. He needs to do more study before he steps into the ring. He's not ready. And I'm willing to talk to him because he's my brother. But the reality is that there are other Hebrew scholars that would have made me really do some work. This is light work this afternoon. This is light work. I'm you know how many articles I came prepared to discuss? I didn't even get through any of them because the reality is that I didn't need them. He didn't respond to any of my questions. He didn't articulate or refute any of my claims. He thinks that saying the word literal makes something literal. He thinks that simply saying that a being has a soul is makes that being literal. By the way, who has seen a soul? The soul is literal? What does literal mean to you? What does literal mean to you? So I don't understand why he thought he was ready. I don't understand why he thought he was ready. But the reality is that he needs to do more research. And I'm going to tell you, as someone who was a scholar, there are weaknesses in the historical record in KEMET as well. I could do better debating me than he did debating me on a light day. I could just do this like brothers do chess in the park and say, Jabari, what about this? I don't know. I can't prove that. Well, what do you mean you can't? I mean, what was he doing? I don't understand why he thought he could come to this. I just don't get it. He didn't talk about David and the 200 foreskins. He didn't explain how creation occurs with no female. He said his response was that females were created. Everyone knows that. I have a mother, I have a wife, I have a sister. There's sisters walking down the block in front of my house right now. You don't have to explain to me that there are women that exist. I'm saying your divine force, the way that the Europeans have described it, they have left the divine feminine out because they have a problem with femininity. That's the reason why certain books that early Christians and some Jewish communities read were not included in the canonical Bible. This